Hi, everyone. Welcome to our latest Money Talks webinar. We are so excited you're here for today's conversation. And buckle up because these sessions are where we get real about the stuff that impacts your business and your life. I'm Katie Mast, Director of Community here at Rock Paper Coin, and your host for today's webinar. If we haven't met before, we're a payment platform built for small business owners that's designed to make invoicing, contracts, and payments easy and affordable, which, let's be honest, is so important in today's economy. One big housekeeping item that we want to get through just before we start is we like to see you in the comments. It makes us happy to see your thoughts, your opinions, your agreements, and your questions while we're chatting. So we want you to make a quick change in your Zoom settings so that we can all see what you have to say. So if you can head on over to the chat and change your settings to chat with everyone, not just panelists and hosts, that'd be great. While you're at it, go ahead and say hello, letting us know who you are, where you are, and then go ahead and drop your Instagram handle right into the chat. So today's topic is so fun and unexpected, but this isn't just about personality fluff. This is about decoding people because once you understand someone's fears, their motivations, and their stress triggers, you can build trust faster and communicate better while enjoying the people that you work with. I'm sure you've seen the word Enneagram floating around, but what if I told you it's not just a fun personality test, that is actually a roadmap to understanding yourself, your communication style, the clients you attract, and the roadblocks that you have in your way? To navigate this conversation, we've got the incredible Ashton, better known as Enneagram Ashton on socials, in the house with us today. She's a speaker, she's an author, and she's an Enneagram expert who makes all this feel real, relatable, and wildly helpful. So let's get a big round of hellos in the chat for Ashton. Hey girl, how you doing today?
I am so good, and that was such a great intro. I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
I'll record it and just like put it on your book
Yeah, literally.
like every day. So I know this is going to be a fun chat, but it's one of those things that you either understand and subscribe to full force, or you stay curious and slightly on the fence about it, not knowing how legit it is. So I'd love to know, just right off the bat, why the topic of the Enneagram and this conversation in general is so important for you to have with us today.
I am a huge believer in when we know things about other people, we can show up and serve them better, right? And so the whole premise of the Enneagram is that we are able to understand why people do things the way that they do. And that comes down to, which I'll talk about, your biggest fears and your biggest desires. And so when we know that about other people, we can cater the way that we behave and we react to the best way to receive them and work with them. And so for this group, obviously it can be super helpful when we are client facing or when we're working with other people to really understand what is behind that person.
Yeah, yeah. And before we get into all of it, I just have to say, I love the Enneagram because you're going to crack up. I'm sure this isn't the first time you've heard this, but I love the Enneagram because the first time that I took the test, it brought me back to the days of taking 17 magazine quizzes
Yes.
while eating Gushers in my room. Like, I seriously lived for those life tests. Is anyone in the chat, anyone here having a nostalgic moment like I am right now?
That's honestly like when a lot of people ask me why I started doing this or like how I got into this. I've always been into personality tests, whether it was, what's my Myers-Briggs at 11 years old in the Borders bookstore, if anybody remembers Borders books, or is it like what flavor of ice cream am I from 17 magazine as a kid?
Gosh, yes. But we can just have an entire session on nostalgic things that make us feel good. Like 17 magazine, all the things.
Yeah.
But when I found the Enneagram, it felt fun like that, which I loved, but also grown up and helpful. right?
Mm.
And that's so important when you're trying to figure out why you don't like working with certain clients or why you keep hiring the same kind of assistant that doesn't work out. My favorite, why you're spiraling because someone didn't reply all to the group email and you like rage out and thinking that now you have to do everything for yourself in order to do it right. So, friend, please tell us in its most basic form, what is the Enneagram? And most importantly, what is it not?
So, the Enneagram, we refer to it as an ancient typing system because it is very old. It's between 2 to 4,000 years old. So, all of the people who think that it was just something that was created on social media in the past decade, that is incorrect. It's the oldest typing system that's out there. The biggest difference between the Enneagram and other systems like Myers Briggs or Strength Finders or DISC assessment is that those tests do a really great job at showing people who they are, like some of their behaviors, right? And so those are also great tools to use. Maybe you're extroverted or you're introverted. Maybe you shy away from conflict or you face it head on. But the Enneagram is about the motivations behind those behaviors. So instead of it being that you shy away from conflict, it's why you shy away from conflict or how you shy away from conflict. And so it's different because we're able to, let's say we have a room full of people who are all procrastinating for some reason. Knowing somebody's Enneagram type can allow you to figure out why somebody feels the need to procrastinate or why they don't turn things in a timely manner. Not to excuse the behavior, but to just give you a better understanding of what is actually going on.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of people right now, because when I go on social media, you see it everywhere on social media. And I think a lot of people see it as cute self-help content in their social feeds, which is true, right? Like there's been a lot that I've saved that I'm like, oh, that's me. But
Yeah.
what I love is using it, just like you said, you're decoding other people as quickly as possible so that you can serve them better.
Mm.
Knowing I had a type 6 client, which don't worry, you'll learn what a type 6 is in a minute. But knowing I had a type 6 client, right? Cautious, anxious, needs reassurance early in our communication was a total game changer. If I used certain wording in my proposal, I knew that my chances of booking this kind of client increased. If I stayed one step ahead and sent proactive updates, my workload was so much easier with this client. I wasn't getting the constant check-in emails and the anxious spiraling. And what I want more people to realize is that you can know this information from the beginning of any relationship of anyone that you're working with. You can tailor your emails, your meetings, even your follow-ups to speak right to people in the way that serves you, but most importantly, them best. So I want to start from the top here. If you've taken a test and know what Enneagram type you are, can you type it in the chat right now for all of everyone that's listening? And for those that don't know, or you kind of know, or you've dabbled a little bit, we got you. So
We
there
got you.
yeah, we got you. Don't worry. You are in the right place. There are 9 Enneagram types. So, Ashton, can you high level walk us through them and how they identify?
So, like I said, your Enneagram type is made up of your biggest fears and your biggest desires. And then from those fears and desires come some stereotypical behaviors that tend to be associated with the types. So, I'm going to give you the biggest fears and the biggest desires of each of the 9 types. So for ones are called the reformer. So their biggest desire is to be seen as a good person, to be moral, ethical, right, to do the right thing, and for other people to do the right thing. Their biggest fear then is being seen as a bad person or being wrong or doing the wrong thing. So this sometimes looks like ones being perfectionistic or focused on order or structure, really tuning in on fairness and honesty, just wanting to do the right thing. Twos are the helper. So their biggest desire is to be loved, wanted, appreciated, and needed. And their biggest fear then is being unloved or unwanted, not appreciated, and not needed. From those motivations come, they're called the helper for a reason. So they tend to be really helpful and caring and compassionate. They love to show up for other people. But remember, it goes back to those motivations of wanting to be loved in return. The three is the achiever. Their biggest desire, they do want to be seen as successful, but ultimately they want to be valued and respected because of that success. And then because of that, their biggest fear tends to be failure and being seen as incapable or inefficient. And so they do tend to have really, driven personalities, motivated. They have this desire to achieve, but also for other people to achieve. So they're great encouragers and cheerleaders along the way. The four is the individualist. Their biggest desire is to be unique or special or different or just a little bit set apart from other people. And then their biggest fear is that something is inherently wrong with them. So they're defective, kind of like that black sheep mentality, something's missing in them. And so, from those motivations, they tend to be really creative and artistic. They are deep feelers and value deep conversations and relationships. And they're really in tune with their feelings, other people's feelings as well. The five is the investigator. Their biggest desire is to gain knowledge and then to share that knowledge with other people, as well as to be seen as competent and capable because of the things that they know. And then their biggest fear is being seen as ignorant, so not knowing something, or being seen as incapable or incompetent. Your fives are stereotypically your most introverted type. And another thing I forgot to mention is they also fear having their resources be depleted. So if you think about your introverted type of person, they kind of hold those resources to themselves, whether it be time, energy, things like that. And so fives do spend a lot of time in their head, thinking things through and just withdrawing a little bit. Sixes are the loyalist. So their biggest desire is safety and security and seeking guidance from other people. And then their biggest fear tends to be fear itself or being without guidance, security, safety, etc. And so, because of that, some of their behaviors are obviously they're the loyalist. So, they love to really show their loyalty to their people, their clients, their workplace environment, whatever that looks like. And they're just very responsible and they're always prepared. The reason for that is they're often anticipating worst case scenarios. Sixes kind of get a reputation of anxiety, kind of what we were talking about before. And it's not your generalized anxiety disorder that, people are diagnosed with, etc. Anybody can have anxiety, right? But for sixes, because of that desire to feel safe, the anxiety might look like anticipating bad things that could happen or wanting to really just feel safe and prevent things from happening, and that's why they're prepared. So their anxiety can present as worry or self-doubt as well. The seven is the enthusiast. So these are stereotypically your most extroverted type. I mean, the name enthusiast kind of makes sense. Their biggest desire is to be happy, but ultimately to seek contentment. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Then their biggest fear, they do have FOMO, but they also fear being trapped in any sort of negativity or emotional pain. So, because of that, their behaviors tend to look like loving experiencing new things, new adventures. They're very social, really creative with their ideas, but remember they're seeking contentment. And so they look for new because they want to feel content in the things that they do. The eight is the challenger. Their biggest desire is to protect themselves and other people. Typically, this looks like their kind of circle or their people. It can also look like vulnerable populations or just people that they feel need to be protected. And then their biggest fear is being seen as weak or powerless or controlled in some way. And so eights kind of have this natural, strong energy that you can feel their presence. They're very decisive, direct. They make great leaders. And that's because they kind of put on that powerful energy. And then nine is the peacemaker. So their biggest desire is to maintain a peaceful environment for themselves, for the people around them. And then their biggest fear tends to be conflict or being separated from the people that they love or alone or abandoned. So the thing about the nines and conflict, because there are many other types who also don't like conflict, but for nines, it's actually driving those behaviors, right? And so for other people who fear conflict, it will go back to their motivations. But for nine, it's actually the conflict that's driving them. This can lead to them, being able to view multiple perspectives. They're very peaceful and patient with other people, go with the flow, kind of whatever anybody wants to do is fine with them.
It's so funny. As you're saying all of these, I'm like, that's my husband. That's my son. That's me. It's like you naturally start putting the pieces together of like, I know that person. I know that person. And it just starts to click. So of course we want people to figure out what their Enneagram type is. So I did see quite a few numbers. We have a lot of ones in here today. The one energy is strong. Yeah, combos. Yes. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing. Ashton does amazing Enneagram education because we have this top layer of like, these are your types. And then it goes really deep after that with wings and combos and a little bit of this and a little bit of this. And you end up being a little potpourri of a bunch of things. So Sabrina, nailed it. That's a future conversation. But we want everyone to be able to figure out what their number is. So Sari is going to drop a link to Ashton's favorite test that you should absolutely click on the link, make sure it opens in a new tab outside of this chat. And be sure that you go and do that today so that you can figure out exactly what number you are, because this is all going to start making a lot more sense. And you'll be able to start using this as a tool once you figure out exactly who you are. Now, I did want to point out a question
Let me,
that,
can I
okay,
give a little preface about the test for a minute?
please.
So most Enneagram educators will say that tests are only about 60% accurate. So tests are a great place to start, but it is up to you at the end of the day, like Katie was saying, to figure out what resonates with you. So the reason I like this test is it's not going to just shoot out like you are a 2 or you are a 7, and instead it's a pie chart. And so what I would do after you get your results is look at the 3 biggest pie slices and then focus in on learning about those 3 types and see what resonates with you from there.
Love. Okay, so literally that's what I was going to say. Somebody,
Sorry.
no, this is great. Your question has been answered. To the person who wrote this, they said, what if I take the test but don't fully resonate with my number? Could it be wrong? And so,
Yes.
yeah,
Good.
we're all like, we are all such a potpourri of a
Yeah.
person. Like we just really are. We're a sprinkle of this and a sprinkle of that. So you wouldn't just have one number that's you either. And so that makes perfect sense. So
So the why again, the thing about tests is we're human, and so sometimes we answer questions in ways we want other people to perceive us, even if we swear up and down we're not doing that. Most of the time we are. Also, tests are really focusing in on your behavior, right? Like they can't ask you, well, why do you avoid conflict? And so that's why it's important to take those results and dive deeper, because for whoever asked that question, that's not the first and will not be the last time that somebody said, I took the test, I got a result, it doesn't resonate with me. What do I do? And I always say, look at your other results and then dive a little bit deeper from there.
it's so funny you say that. She's going to murder me for saying this on a video that's going to live on the internet forever. But I had my mom take the test, and
Hey,
she,
mom.
hi, mom. She she did that. She answered the questions how she thought was
Right.
correct,
Mhm.
not how it really was. And she would answer it and I'd be like, "But really?" Like, before you hit submit, like, "But really?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "But really it's this." And she's like, "No." And so you do, like, you get defensive and it's very vulnerable when you're answering these questions about yourself because you're like, "Well, I know morally the answer should be this. However,
Right.
I know right now, me as a person,
Mhm.
I'm this." And it's
Yeah.
really hard. You have to be very honest and not get defensive when taking those tests.
Right.
I'm honest. Um, okay, so this might be a wild idea. This could go really, really bad for me, but go with me here. I thought it might be fun to do a speed round walkthrough of how each type shows up as a client so that our listeners can get a good grasp of what the types are. And I took the liberty of making a list and taking a stab at this.
Cool.
I know. So I'm going to pitch the vibe. I'm going to pitch this to you and you let me know if I nailed the type. And also, if you know in the comments, like chat it up what you think too. But we're going to speed round through this. So type 1, I would say that that's the structured perfectionist client. As you said, right? They're identified there. But they're most likely to email you about a typo in your proposal
Yep.
and ask about your certifications and insurance before booking you.
Yep.
Great.
Absolutely. Yep.
So in talking to them, I'd give them clarity and follow through and bonus points for saying, "I've already outlined your checklist for each month during onboarding."
Mhm. Yeah, be very clear with expectations and what it is that you're going to do, what it is that they're going to do.
Whew, okay, we're off to a good start, right? This is okay. Type 2, the hugging helper client, most likely to ask if you need a snack or remind you to rest and take a break while you're working at their event. Send you a thank you gift after working together and say, "I just want everyone to feel loved and included in their inquiry."
Yep.
So, what I'm hoping everyone starts to hear is that you can really start to get a good sense of who someone is the moment they fill out that inquiry form and start giving you more information or you get on that call with them. Like, there are signs, there are clues as to who somebody is. So, type 3, the achiever client, most likely to say, "This needs to be iconic." Ask for deliverables yesterday and already have their Instagram post scheduled for the moment that they say, "I do."
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'd position your services as tools for making their big goals shine. That's how I would go about having conversations with them. Okay, type 4, the romantic client, most likely to say, "I don't want anything cookie cutter and want their event to be deeply meaningful and never before seen." That
Very unique. We want things to be unique and never done before.
I am just okay. I'd acknowledge their originality and make their experience feel artistic and emotional. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Type 5. Whew, halfway done. The undercover investigator client, most likely to secretly follow your blog and socials for months before reaching out, read your entire website, pricing guide, FAQs, anything you had available before inquiring, and email you one detailed message instead of 10 back and forths.
Yep, they've already done the research on you before they've even inquired.
Right.
Whereas a lot of other types don't do that. They like wait for you to give the details
Yeah. They're like,
before
"You're the expert.
gather.
You tell me."
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd give them space and
Mhm.
information because they are going to reach out when they're ready and they will come prepared. They will be ready to roll. Um,
Mhm.
okay, so type 6, the slightly panicked yet loyal client. So this person is most likely to ask a lot of what if questions, need your backup plan to have a backup plan, and they really just want to know it's all going to be okay, but most importantly, that you believe that it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to have a lot of fear, especially when of doing an event, right? That something's going to go wrong. So they want to make sure that you also are prepared for whatever is going to come your way.
Yes. Yes, and I would just obviously keep them updated and looped in before they even need to ask, because that's where that anxiousness, right? That concern comes in. Okay, so type 7, the excited and enthusiastic clients. So they're most likely to ask for a champagne tower on a boat at sunset and then change their mind 5 times in one consultation. But they're the life of the party, right? So I would celebrate their ideas and then gently guide them back to clarity.
Mhm. Yep.
Two
Perfect.
more. Man, I gotta end strong here. Type 8, the challenger client with no fluff and no fear. So they are most likely to walk in with a vision and a budget that means business, and they're going to respect you more if you say no confidently.
Yep. Yeah. They don't want you to beat around the bush. They want you to be as direct as they are.
As an Enneagram 2, type 8s terrify me. This is like, this is not my ideal client. Like, and it's
Yeah.
right. And so that's another amazing thing is
Yeah.
like, I know who makes me very uncomfortable and who I'm probably going to also make uncomfortable. So
Yep.
this is part of why this is so important. And
Mhm.
then type 9, the no drama llama peacemaker client. So they're most likely to say, I'm good with whatever you decide and avoid conflict like the plague during the planning process.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, I'd lead them toward clarity and decisions that light them up because they do want to be excited and they do want to know that their ideas are fun and feel validated, but also making them feel calm, safe, and seen. Okay, so
Yeah.
how did I do?
Anything that is like conflict averse or like mediating, like making sure that nothing is going to stress them out in that sort of way.
Yes. Okay, so it sounds like I passed the test.
Yeah.
Whew, high pressure
That's
situation.
great.
That really could have gone sideways. I had some confidence going in there. But, it's so funny because hearing all of these, I'm literally seeing visions and hearing past conversations with past clients, vendors, and even myself and my team, picturing like who fits into each one. It's really wild. So, tell us obviously in the chat if you were doing the same thing while we were reading through those. But I read this lately. The Enneagram doesn't tell you who you are, it tells you why you are.
Mhm.
And after hearing those client types, how do you think understanding core motivations is a game changer for service providers?
It's a game changer because for a lot of different reasons. You're going to be able to understand why they say no or what the roadblocks are for getting them to sign your service or how they expect the service to be done. It's not just explaining like who it is, like kind of what you said, like who it is that you're working with or who it is that is hiring you, but it's why they're even deciding to work with you in the first place. And so we can sign more people or get more people involved when we can understand what we need to do to fulfill that why.
Yeah. And listen, I'm just here to say that every weird client behavior or quirk makes so much more sense when you get to know their type and use it to your advantage. So all of a sudden, all the things that become like nuisances or bog down your process all of a sudden get a lot easier to manage on your end when you start to understand these quirks. So I know taking the test is pretty standard for fully understanding the Enneagram. And earlier, we dropped your favorite test in the chat. So if you're just joining us, I saw a couple of people pop in. Go ahead and look in the chat for that link. But Ashton, I know everyone listening is thinking it sounds amazing to know so much about potential or current client personality and what they need. But how do you even get to that level? How do you begin to understand what signs to look for that would even reveal a person's type?
So it is challenging, right? Because I'm sitting here telling you like people only the person themselves is going to be able to know why it is that they do things. And so, I've seen a lot of people who actually put it on their like inquiry forums, like, do you know your Enneagram type? Or it can be a great conversation starter, if they don't know their type and how to find your type and it's etc. But if you don't have time for that, which a lot of us are, crunched for time or the capacity or anything like that, it's going to be simply observing and hoping that you get it right, right? So, I always say that you can't assume what other people's motivations are because you're only seeing the behaviors, but we can ask questions that in our minds kind of get to those motivations. So, for example, if somebody is wanting to, if you are observing them and they're really trying to like be prepared, having a conversation with them of what is it that is worrying you so much that you feel like, you aren't prepared enough, or what is it that's making you want to, make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. Or, for other types like for eights, for example, like what can I do that is a best way to support you? And sometimes even asking that question and having other people answer that, you'll understand, oh, this is how they like support. This aligns with a specific type. And now I can kind of understand how I can better serve them based on that knowledge.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And what I'm hearing is that your client is being difficult. They're being a type 5 in a decision-making crisis. So
Yes.
hand them the facts, not the feelings, and watch things get back to smooth sailing.
The other thing to recognize too is how you are as the service provider, right? So if you are, types twos, threes, and fours are known to kind of be more of our feelers. And if you are in that area and you're expecting other people to also be feelers and they aren't, that's where some of that miscommunication comes into play because the way that you function is going to be different than the way that other people function.
Yeah. Okay. This is so fun. Let's take this further and journey into client experience because here's a thought. What if a client experience isn't about over delivering? It's about deeply understanding, and somewhere along the way, client experience became do more, give more, add more, right? Those late night emails, the free extras that we give, the constant availability. But that's not always what your client actually wants. And we've been conditioned to think that client experience means adding more. But what does it look like to serve better by doing less, in your opinion?
Yeah, because, what is considered, over delivering is going to be different based on the person. Like, what if someone doesn't care about their emails being answered at midnight, right? Like, what if somebody doesn't care about whatever it is that you're doing to over deliver, whatever that means to you? And so it's about, first of all, sticking to your boundaries, but also setting those boundaries, calling you out twos, especially setting those boundaries and making sure that you are doing what other people want you to do as their service provider.
Yeah, I think sometimes the best gift that you can give is clarity, feeling
Right.
not having to ask twice, anticipating what matters to someone before they have to ask. Like these are all things that we have as our personality traits, right? Like we can all go through the room and say like these are my top 3 non-negotiables as a human of like what I want in a friend, right? And those are things that are going to carry through work, through your interactions, through all the things. And so I believe the pressure to constantly over deliver comes from our own Enneagram type, not just our clients,
Yes. There
right?
are going to be types that are more prone to, not being able to shut their laptop down and not being able to say no and doing all of these things.
Ashton, you're really coming for me today, girl. So, what does anticipating client needs actually look like in real time? Can you walk us through that using a couple of Enneagram types as examples?
Yeah, so anticipating needs is, again, it's going to be dependent on what your clients' Enneagram types are. So, like we said, for twos, they really need that connection. Like they need the connection with you as the service provider. And so, for other types who might not be more like as relationship focused, that might be difficult to know, what that looks like to that person. But that connection piece is really important. For fives, like we said before, it might look like fives needing space. And so giving them that space to think things through and process. For sixes, we mentioned, making sure that you are as detailed as possible with your plans or being as prepared as possible so that they feel safe and secure in moving forward. Um, for eights, like they like to have a little bit of control. And so, whatever that looks like for that person can be important. So, it really is about, what it is that each type needs in a client relationship and how to fulfill that need based on what you know.
Yeah. Okay, so this feels like the perfect segue to focus on vendor and team dynamics then,
Mhm.
because I know that I want to make sure that I'm not giving a creative assistant powerhouse a spreadsheet job that completely drains their soul and, they're just like a puddle of mush and so unhappy. I know that we both firmly believe that you have to understand the people you work with every single day, their
Mhm.
strengths, their weaknesses, their quirks. And I'm talking about consistent vendor teams, your day of assistants, second shooters, right? People you trust and work with very closely. Now, for everyone listening, I want you to think about your favorite floral designer who might need a week to reply to an email, and that might be like your like moment with them, but they deliver editorial magic on install day. Like they have never let you down. Or think about your ride or die photographer who never confirms the timeline. You can send it 50,000 times and you're never going to get a response. But they show up 15 minutes early and they stay on track all day long. And like your assistant, right? Like they're one rescheduled meeting away from a meltdown. But then they get on with the client and they make them feel like they would have waited all day for them. All of those examples, all those people are showing signs of working in their own specific way through their own strengths and weaknesses. So, Ashton, how can we naturally introduce the Enneagram into conversations without it feeling woo woo or personal while really trying to understand in our circle what everybody's quirks and needs are?
Mhm. And sometimes it is just being, upfront and saying, hey, I've used this tool that's like really changed the way that my family relationships are, my relationships with my friends. And I think it would be really beneficial for us in the capacity in which we work together. I think that is, and it might not be for everybody. I, teach a whole thing on like how to handle objections or how to handle, um, people just saying weird things about the Enneagram, but it's not going to be for everybody. But I just always say, like, if it is going to help better understand each other so that we can work better together, what is the harm in trying? And
Mm.
so it's just as simple as introducing it in that sort of way, especially if it's your own individual team, like an assistant, somebody who is, shooting with you regularly, somebody who's on your team. I'm a huge believer. In fact, that's primarily what I do is teaching people how to best work together on their team. Because kind of what you said, if you are giving them a job or assigning them a task that isn't aligned with the way that they function, it might not be done to, the way that we want it to be done. And they might burn out quicker because it's, exhausting them more because it's not something that lights their soul on fire. And so if we can figure that out and figure out what it is, like who gets the spreadsheet and who gets the creativity, and not saying that, the creative person can never, understand a spreadsheet, but wouldn't we want to help align the individuals with the tasks that bring them the most joy and allow them to be truly authentic in the job that they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say my business guy rocketed the day that I brought on a director who her whole life was back end logistics, confirming. I mean, she just lived and breathed every single moving part of every one of our events. And there's not a single thing that slipped through her fingers like she lived there. But get her to a table and ask her to fine tune the details and get creative and add something to a missing table, and you could see the stress just build up, right? Because it was not her comfort zone. And flip that around. I mean, I can handle a spreadsheet all day long, but I will put it off as long as possible, if it means that I can go do super fun things and, be with people. And so it really, I mean, it could be a light switch moment of getting the right person in the right seat in your business for it to completely take off and be exactly what you needed. And that actually leads me to this next question, because this is a high stress industry, and, there's a lot of different personalities, and there's a lot of different expectations from different vendors and who's doing what. And so it just becomes a pressure cooker sometimes on that day. So how can we use the Enneagram to keep everyone grounded and working together instead of clashing and escalating stress and chaos?
Well, it's just about understanding, right? And then within that understanding, offering grace, compassion, and if somebody's doing something differently than you, it's not that they're doing something the wrong way, it's that they have a different way or a different foundation to get from point A to point B. I like to explain the Enneagram as lenses sometimes. So let's say that all Enneagram twos are wearing blue colored glasses and threes are wearing green colored glasses. So everything that a two looks at would have that blue tint to it. And everything that a three looks at would have that green tint to it. So let's say you're working on the same timeline or this working at the same event, and you're just viewing it through your specific lenses, right? And that's not wrong. All blues aren't wrong. It's just this is the lens that makes the most sense to them. And taking it a step further, let's say there are a couple twos, because even if you are of the same type of other people, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be stress and there isn't going to be conflict. It's just you might share some characteristics. So think about how many different shades of blue there are, right? You have light blue, you have dark blue, you have navy. And so you're viewing the situation with a similar foundation, but still just different based on who you are and what you're bringing to that event or that situation. And so just having that realization that we all are so different and it's okay. And we all don't need to be right. And we can all do things differently to get the same result.
Yeah, and hearing all of this, it keeps bringing me back to confidence, self-worth, knowing what you bring to the table. Last month, our session was on imposter syndrome with Terica, and I can't help but wonder, how often we solve surface level business problems with surface level solutions, when the real issue is rooted in fear, identity, or worthiness, and not really bringing our best selves to the table either. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting is that some types are going to struggle with imposter syndrome more than others, and that's because of the motivations and fears like we talked about before.
Yeah, and vendor communication, team dynamics, client experience, I mean, self-worth, confidence, the list could go on, but it's all connected. And we don't need another collaboration is key quote. That's not what we need. We need to understand why the people around us behave the way that they do.
Yeah.
And most importantly, we need to stop putting ourselves in roles that don't fit and then wondering why we're spiraling and things aren't working out.
Mm. Yeah, so true.
Okay, so we need to move into a very serious last part of this before we get into some Q&A. And I wanted to touch on knowing yourself and implementation. So, fear, stress, tension, dysfunction. These are all feelings at some point that a business owner has felt, does feel, or is trying to solve for. And your type impacts your pricing strategy, your marketing style, and as you even mentioned earlier, definitely your boundaries. But here's the thing, you are your first client and you know yourself best. But most of us are building workflows and using systems because we saw someone else using it or we think it's good for our clients. And so, for everyone listening to this, I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time you built a workflow around your natural strengths and needs? Instead of one that is just mimicking what you saw online, or it's because it's what everyone else used, or you think that it's what your clients need. So, Ashton, what do we do when our type is the one creating tension, confusion, and dysfunction?
So specifically, you mean like within the client relationship?
Yeah.
So the whole thing about the Enneagram too is that I always say this, but it's not like a comfy cozy thing. Like sometimes it makes us feel kind of badly about ourselves. It gives us that like punch in the gut sort of feeling like, "Oh, I do that."
Yep.
And that's a good thing because that's where the growth can come in, right? So when you recognize that you are, not being what we call like the healthiest version of yourself, you can do things to get back. I always like to explain the Enneagram too as a like modern day GPS for those of you who remember GPSs. I need to stop using that language. But
It's our
it
nostalgia again. You're bringing it
I
back. Matt,
know, right?
anyone?
Yeah. But the Enneagram, you know how when you are, let's say you're using Apple Maps or whatever, and you are starting to get yelled at by Siri and it says rerouting, right? So having the knowledge of the Enneagram and your type specifically can let you know when you need to reroute. So, for example, if you know that this thing is going to set you off or cause tension or cause annoyance, then you know, okay, this is what I need to do in order to reroute and get to the better side of my type, or to eliminate some of that tension and move to a healthier version.
I love that. So, do you think your personality or working style can just be your type's fear in disguise? So, for example, a type 8 could confuse control with leadership, and a type 1 could confuse perfectionism with excellence, right?
For sure, definitely like the healthy versus the unhealthy side. Like if you are an unhealthier type, then you are going to, if you're an unhealthier one, you are going to lean more into those perfectionistic tendencies. If you're an unhealthy eight, you're going to lean more into that need to control.
Yeah. And do you see that a lot of people don't know their stress responses? I think that's why so many people get defensive so easily. They just really, truly don't understand. They don't understand who they are, right? I mean, we're all just trying to figure out who we are and what we're supposed to be when we grow up. But I think it's really a hidden danger in our
Yeah.
businesses, and it's kind of just hiding in plain sight. Can you walk us through some examples of what stress responses look like for a few types and what a good awareness solution would be?
Yeah. So without opening up a can of worms, with the Enneagram, we all have a number that we go to when we're stressed, and then we have a number that we go to when we are in growth. And when we go to our stress number, we take on the unhealthy characteristics of that type. And so, what that can look like is ones, for example, they will withdraw into their emotions and become moody, depressed, self absorbed, kind of like nobody understands me, nobody gets me, I'm carrying this all by myself, I'm the only one that's doing things the right way. And that looks like the unhealthy four. The two, when they're stressed, they will feel like they're kind of losing control, and then they tend to lash out, or get aggressive or try to be a little bit more controlling, like the unhealthy eights. Threes become so overwhelmed with all of the things that they have to do that they don't want to do any of it, and they become unmotivated and procrastinate like the unhealthy nine. Fours, they start to neglect their own needs and expect other people to show up for them, so they become a little bit more needy, like the unhealthy two. Fives will become scattered. They'll have a hard time focusing. They might just be like kind of all over the place, energy bun or energizer bunny, like the unhealthy seven. Sixes will feel like they're the only ones who are doing things, that they might have workaholic tendencies, more self-focused and focused on their own goals, like the three. Sevens will become perfectionistic, critical of themselves and others, judgmental, like the unhealthy one. Eights will withdraw completely, shut everybody out, like the unhealthy five. And then nines will become anxious or worried, or they'll experience self doubt, like the six.
Amazing. Amazing. And so would you say at the end of the day that if something you are if this is something that you're struggling with, please know that like there's some part of your system or your process is broken, but because you're building it for someone else, not for yourself. Like
Yeah.
you're just truly not showing up how you need to show up for you in order to be successful.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, just at the end of the day. So you need to find out more about what makes you you and
Mhm.
what you need. And then you need to start rebuilding your processes for you.
Mhm.
Everything else will just start to fall in line. It's just so simple. It's just so easy,
So
right?
simple, so easy.
Build it all, everybody.
Go
Just
team.
sometimes hearing that, right? Sometimes it's like that's the answer I was looking for. Like maybe it's not you, maybe it's me. And so it's really just sometimes hearing that and saying like, okay, let's start from square one. Let's take this personality test. Let's see what I'm dealing with here. It really is kind of the restart sometimes that people need. So, oh my gosh, girl, we could talk all day about this.
Yep.
Really, I mean, we were talking before we even got started that this was really hard for me because even just picking the questions that I wanted to ask you was so hard because I had like 80 more that we could have dove into. So I think we're going to need a part two on this. But before we
Maybe.
go, right? We'll schedule it immediately. Before we go, I want people to know where to find you, first of all, how to work with you, and what you want them to do next.
Yeah. So if you aren't following along, you should follow me at Enneagram Ashton, or you can check out my website at enneagramashton.com. I do a couple different things. One thing specifically is I train people who have their own businesses on how to use the Enneagram in their workplace. And then I also do some one-on-one calls, help them figure out their type. And what I primarily do is speak to businesses about and do workshops on how they can use the Enneagram in their business. Next steps, if you don't know your type, figure out your type. And one thing that I like to suggest people to do is to just really do a deep dive. You know, like if you feel, again, you have your top three results, either go to my page, go to other people's pages, and just look for the information on those types and see what resonates the most. There are a lot of really great Enneagram books that are out there. When I first started doing this, there was like one. And now there are so many. So I have written a few: the Enneagram for Relationships, the Enneagram Made Simple, and a little bit of Enneagram. But there are so many books out there, so many resources that you can utilize to do a deep dive. The most important thing is that you don't just figure out your type and then just go on your way, right? Like that's not the point. And quite frankly, you're missing the point if that's what you do. It's to be used as a tool instead of a test. It's to be used as a tool to be able to better understand yourself and others, and to grow into really who you were created to be.
Yeah.
Helps.
I love that. I'm just adding your link in here. And please get her books. She's an author. everyone sitting here right in front of us. That already is just such an amazing thing. Let me ask you a question. Does being an author go with your Enneagram type?
Maybe. It's the motivation, right? Why are you an author?
I love this. Okay, so let's go through a couple Q&A because there were some fiery ones in here, and I know we've got a few minutes, so I think we can get through these. Um, but let me see. So, what Enneagram types are most likely to ghost, flake, and push boundaries?
Hmm, that's a good question.
Question.
The issue is that ghosting and flaking and pushing boundaries are behaviors, right? And so it's really going to be why they're doing that. So, like, what I could explain to you is, twos might ghost you because they feel bad saying no. Whereas, fours might ghost you because they don't feel like a connection. It's now, pushing against boundaries, people, there are going to be some specific types who just are more direct in that sort of way, like ones, threes, eights, they're the ones that are a little bit stronger with their exterior. But again, the motivation is going to be different.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's see, we answered that one. We did good with some of these. Like I'm like, oh, answer that. Okay, what do you do when the role you're best at doesn't feel like the one that's bringing in money?
Ugh, I have this thought all the time as a fellow business owner. Um, it would be very privileged of me to say that just don't do that, but I know we all need to make money and it's a battle that I have all the time. My uh advice is to find something within that role that is aligned with your Enneagram type, or find something that is aligned with what you want to be doing within that role. So, an example is, I don't know what your type is, but an example would be if you are a three and you're not feeling fulfilled because there's no like competitive factor, or there's no like ability to be social, or it's finding ways that you can kind of compete with yourself within that role, or find what's setting your soul on fire, and add something into that service that's going to align with that.
Yeah, love that. This one is also in that same realm, but about team. Is there a way to use the Enneagram to restructure roles inside a small team where everyone wears five hats?
Yeah. So pretty much what we were saying before is figure out everybody's type and what aligns with them specifically. And so if everybody's wearing five hats, like let's divide the hats and split them up into the most meaningful people for that specific hat or that specific role. And you'll find that people are more productive.
Yeah. This one, I feel like I could answer for you, but I'm gonna let you answer and then we'll see if we have the same answer. So, how can I use the Enneagram to better understand vendors who seem super controlling or chaotic on event day? I'm tired of feeling like the only adult in the room.
Okay, what would I say for this? So it's going to depend on your Enneagram type specifically, first off, right? But meet them where they're at and ask the questions, like why are you, and it might feel uncomfortable for some types, but can you explain to me a little bit more why this is important to you, or why are you so worried about things being this way, or go get a snack and just chill out for a minute is what I would really want to say.
At your vendor dinner, sit down and say, "Why are you the way you are?" I think
Yeah.
that's really what we're getting at. But my answer is hire Ashton, and she will
Well,
help you go through this.
also true. Also true. Typical Enneagram 2 over here. I am not great at selling myself.
I know what are the chances two Enneagram twos would enter a chat and start and lead a webinar together? Like we're just really, I say all the time to everyone, my kids, strangers, like, please do as I say, not as I do. Like I am not a good representation of my thoughts are great. My actions are not. Oh, this was so fun, my friend. Thank you so much for being here today and lending
Having me.
your expertise and your experience. And I mean, honestly, you brought it. You taught us so much. This was amazing. And I thought I knew a lot about the Enneagram world, and you just showed me how much more there is to learn. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, everyone, as a reminder, this is a monthly webinar hosted by us, Rock Paper Coin. So be sure to look out for our next session, which is live on August 13th with Maria Bayer. The truth is, we are not all born to be natural sales leaders, but we all can learn to confidently sell without feeling slimy and giving the ick. So, Maria is the perfect person to dive into the conversation with us and have you come out feeling empowered and ready to book that next client at double your current price. So come dive into that conversation with us. My friend Ashton, thank you again for your time today. It is always a pleasure to have you and get to spend time with you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thanks everyone for listening. We will see you very, very soon.